We've been collecting a lot of different wonderful artifacts of our township, and we just appreciate that. We appreciate all of you being here. We have such a great community, and it's something that we do want to celebrate all the time. We actually have office hours that we're now having from 9 to 11:30 on Tuesdays, every Tuesday. So if you have something you want to stop by and see some of the things that we have, or you want to drop something off, please feel free to do so. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the show over here to Barbara, and she will do the introductions. Barbara?
See that? I didn't know it. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see a good crowd. I wish we had this kind of crowd every month, but we're really happy that all of you are here. And I'm going to introduce Betty Damiani Miller, who's going to give us some history about the town of Woxall. So if you could give her a hand. Hold it. Oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to do great.
Hello, everybody. Friends, neighbors, family. Nice to see everybody together. And I've been asked by these young ladies to share what I know about Woxall. I believe a lot of you know a whole lot more than I do. But because I've been asked, I'm cooperative. And I'm trying my best today. So, I know that at the end, if some of you have more details and have more things that would be very interesting, feel free. And we'll take care of listening to you when you're ready to share something. So other than that, I think I'll go through my notes.
Hold on 1 second. I'm going to try and turn this volume up. So everybody hold your ears.
Can you hear?
You have to hold it right. I'm not holding it right. No, just keep it in front of your mouth, because sometimes you move.
Okay.
Don't talk like an.
Not better?
It's the hard part.
Is that okay? Can you hear
Yes.
back there?
Yes.
They can hear. They can
Okay.
hear.
Okay. Good.
Good. Thank you,
No
Barbara.
problem. No problem.
Appreciate it. All right. In the early history of Woxall, I wasn't here, so I don't know a lot about that. But one of our neighbors, Nathan Rutko, as one of his college assignments, wrote the history of Woxall to the best of his ability. And he did a lot of research. And after he did that in 2006, at some point he came over and brought me a copy of it. So I'm very thankful for that, because he had more of the old history that helps a lot for where we began. Briefly, I'm going to include some of the facts that he had in his report, and we'll start with the Lenape Indians. They lived here. They were the first to live in this area. And William Penn bought 30,000 acres of land in this area from the Lenape. And in 1684 is when he bought that. Much later, due to religious persecution in other countries, many religious groups immigrated to this area to participate in William Penn's great social experience. Salford Township was formed in 1726, and it was later split into 4 townships and then split again. Now we have Upper Salford, and that is Woxall and Salford, and I don't know if it includes other areas real close. They do? Okay, good. Most of you already know how Waxhaw was named. Probably you know the whole story, but I'm going to repeat it. The first name for this village was given by a Pennsylvania Dutch or German name. And if I say it correctly, it's Kroppenstedtel. Kroppenstedtel. Did you know that? And that means Crow Town. It was an adjustment, Kroppenstedtel, an adjustment from the Indian name, which was even more difficult to pronounce. Later, it was called Mechanicsville. And because there were so many Mechanicsville in Pennsylvania, in 1888, the government said to the men in Waxhaw, you've got to find a different name because the mail is always getting misdirected. So you've got to change from Mechanicsville. So the local men would usually meet in the evening in the general store to just talk about the news of the day. And they got together and tried to figure out a better name. And they couldn't come to an agreement. So finally they saw an article on the grocery shelf that was Knoxall. And they said, we'll send that one, we'll be Knoxall. But because of the way they printed it, the people who recorded it got the first letter wrong and they wrote Waxhaw. And it's still Waxhaw today. And the general store and the post office were at the intersection of Perkiomanville Road and Old Skipback Pike, and the office is still there. The post office is still there. The town dance hall is at the end of Old Skipback, before you hit 63, if you go towards the 63 route, just before that was the old dance hall. It's now a private home, been renovated, and is a private home. The businesses in Waxhaw in those early years were the Black Horse Inn in 1790. The hotel, it was a hotel and a restaurant, and it's now a private home. Also, there was a creamery, and that was right down past the post office and the general store, and it became the Heller family home. There was also a wheelwright, and of course the general store, and many family farms. In 1732, some church groups, the Lutherans and the Reformed, combined together to purchase 38 acres of land from the sons of William Penn. And later, in 1744, they erected a log building called German Meeting House, and that's right behind the old Goshenhofen Church. And you can, I think, still make arrangements if you want to tour that old log cabin, schoolhouse, meeting house from before. It's very interesting. In 1858, the first major building in Waxhaw was the beautiful old Goshenhofen Church, Reformed Church, and the pastor there today is Reverend Kevin Park. Then we know about the Waxhaw one-room schoolhouse, and all the villages around had their own small one-room schoolhouse. The Waxhaw schoolhouse was built in 1872, approximately 150 years ago. And the children from Salford and Hendricks and Waxhaw all attended that school. Most of my older brothers and myself and some of the others also attended that school, and I and some of the others graduated from the 8th grade from the Waxhaw School. But it was closed in 1953. And when it was closed, our dad purchased it and converted it into a small house. And our sister, Lilia Schaefer, lives there now, today. Besides the buildings I've already mentioned in the early years, Woxall consisted most of farms, operating farms, working farms, and farmhouses. I'm not sure, but I think I counted about 19 or 20 original farmhouses in this area. I could be wrong. The farmhouses were usually two-story houses made of stone, sometimes the stone covered with stucco, like the one we live in, and sometimes partly brick. There were no individual ranch-style houses at that time or cottages, but they came later, and perhaps Andy can tell us a little bit about that, because he knows that his dad was in that business and built some of those houses, and Dick Schaefer did stone work on some of them, and so maybe Andy can say a little bit about that. So, just a brief overview of the farms that I was familiar with when I was growing up in this area. And if you start in the middle of the village, there was the post office and store, of course, and on each of the other three corners were the big farmhouses and farms. Then if you continue down Perkiomanville Road, northwest, the next farm would be the Schuneman Appliance Store and Farm, and later the Stanley Farm. And I'm not sure if I have that right, whether Schunemans were there first or the Stanleys, but that was an appliance store at one time. Today, it's the Derek Lindsay Home and Lindsay Tree Service in that farmhouse and building. So as you continue following west, northwest, down Perkiomanville Road, the next place is a lane moving back towards the Weiss chicken farms in the back and their house back there. Then facing Perkiomanville Road is the Lloyd Brinkman house. And Jack Lloyd had planted quite a pine grove there, and it was destroyed by the tornado. I think it was 2019 when we had the tornado that destroyed that pine grove, and it looks horrible. Continuing west was the Riggles pig farm. And we used to run down sometimes and play down there. I don't know who lives there now. And then past the pig farm was another lane going to the right and several farmhouses down there. And after that comes the quarry. Nothing in between there. And at the stone quarry, then you get into Perkiomanville. And across from that, there was another farmhouse. And then also, just before the quarry is that property that is now a beautiful boarding place for horses. Very nice. So then if you come back up the hill, you have the Kratz Road with one farm at the bottom of the Kratz Road, and then the railroad tracks and the Perkioman Creek. I remember one time when I was a kid, our parents took us with some friends down to the end of the Kratz Road to the creek to have a picnic. And that was very fun and memorable. So as we continue up, we would drive past the long lane that went back to the McConnell farm. McConnell's had this beautiful orchard, peaches, apples, vegetables, and Jiggs McConnell would later had one of the huge fields planted with tomatoes for Campbell's Soup Company. And in the summer, he would hire the teenagers to pick the tomatoes. And he paid us 10 cents a basket for all the tomatoes that we picked, and that's how we saved money for our school clothes. Then at the end of the week, the big trucks would come from Campbell's Soup Company and pick up all boxes, the baskets of tomatoes that we had picked. And later, he turned that field into a strawberry field, and then now today it's cornfields. If you continue up towards our house, the Young's oil storage tanks have been built there, put there. Our dad had sold a parcel of land to John R. Young so he could put those oil tanks there. So next after that is our home, and which our dad purchased early in 1933. I think it was about 24 or 25 acres at that time. And we moved there in early 1933 when I was 5 months old. At that time I had 2 brothers, and later my sister and 5 other brothers were born. Our parents before that had lived in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, and Dad had a shop where he designed homemade shoes for people who wanted them, and he also repaired shoes. And the reason they moved from Drexel Hill to Woxall was that Dad had been diagnosed with very severe stomach ulcers. And the doctor told him, you've got to get out of the city, you've got to stop working on shoes, that leather dust is ruining your stomach and those ulcers, and when you repair shoes, that dust is horrible for your body, so you've got to get out and move. And so, at that time, medicine wasn't as good as it is today, and they didn't have anything to say for him that that could be healed. They said, just go, and the only thing you can do is eat pureed foods and very careful what kind they are, and then do the best you can. And so he obeyed that and came up here and bought the farm. Dad attempted farming with the advice and the help from the other farms around him. The men would help him and give him advice, but farming was not in his DNA. And he was miraculously healed of that ulcer, and his doctors confirmed that it was totally gone. So he opened a shoe shop in Lansdale and went back to the business that he had apprenticed for in Italy. And then later, his sons all helped and worked in a shoe shop and learned how to do that job also. And then John Damiani Chippy, he moved the shoe shop from Lansdale to Woxall in the building right beside his house, and he's repaired shoes for quite a long time. Our house, which is the Damiani house and the Lloyd house across the street, were built by the Hendricks family. I don't know how old the Lloyd house is or what year it was built, but the older one is our Damiani home, and that was built in 86. And the reason we know that is because when we were making some changes and redoing a room, took the trimming off a door, and underneath the door trim was the carpenter's name and the year. And that's how we know what the year is. Also, a custom that they had was for the builders, when they were building and putting in new windows, they would put a coin under the windowsill with the year that they had done that. We took out and replaced one of the front windows. We found the coin. and we've misplaced it. I have no idea what the date was on it anymore. We were
I wish I
hoping,
knew.
we were hoping to say that something happened to that. So, we'll get back to the Schoolhouse Road, which at the head of the Schoolhouse Road was the Snyder home. And then if you drive past the school, you go down to Hendricks Road and turn right and come to the Tabor United Methodist Church on the right. In 1862, a very simple, rustic, one-room building was erected by a group of families, and the land was donated by Jacob, here I go, Scholl-Letterer, I think that's correct, I'm not sure, and it was known as the Scholl-Letterer Meeting House. And that family donated the property for this humble church building and lived several hundred yards from the church. The Scholl-Letterers and the Young families were the originators and influenced the development of Tabor United Methodist Church. Fred McConnell donated the land for the cemetery there, and that church over the years grew slowly. Today they added on to the building and they have Sunday school rooms, and it is quite a nice facility. And since the church did not have a parsonage for their pastor over the years, early in 1959, our dad gave the church some pasture land that abutted Hendricks Road so that they could build a parsonage for their pastor. Today the pastor is Reverend Ed Van Arsdale. Woxall continued to grow as farmland, and it became house lots, and that's where I could stop because I wasn't here during 1955 up to 1994. We were in New England, pastoring churches there, and so we don't know what was going on here. But the farms were disappearing and house lots were appearing here, and the community was growing and
We
growing.
came back.
I'm sorry?
But we came back.
Yes. In 1994 we came back, but we had the wonderful, happy years in northern New England. But my husband Peter retired and we came home. And then after a little while, my brother JR, who deceased in December, wanted my husband to be his associate pastor, so he went back to work for 18 years as associate pastor for JR at Family Worship Center in Lansdale. As far as the house changing the property, my dad hired a surveyor and divided his property into house lots for 9 of his children, for each one to have a lot. Now, not everyone built on the lot that he appointed for them because some of them already had their own houses. But Pete Damiani did build on his lot, as did Lilia and Dick Schaefer, J.R. Damiani, Paul Damiani, all built their houses. Later, Paul sold his house to John, Chippy, and that's when Chippy moved his shoe business there. I mentioned that the only homes in Woxall were the farmhouses and businesses, but Pete Damiani chose to be a builder as his occupation, and he built ranch-style homes, and Dick Schaefer did the stone wall and brickwork on them. And Andy, I don't know if you want to tell us when those things happened, when we weren't here anymore?
Well, I think most of them, you want me to come up there?
Yes.
You're better than me. Thank you for that. Actually, you did a pretty darn good job. It's hard to act to follow. But being, I'm up here, yeah. So my dad was a builder, and the first house he built was his own. And I think, you know, he told me once he was successful at that, and it, you know, looked all right, and it stood straight. He figured, I think I can do this. So he decided to be a builder. And most of the first homes he built were a lot of the ranchers in Woxall and some in Salfordville. And I guess the most notable thing about it is that this was, I think, the late 60s, early, maybe around 70, give or take. I was like 6, 7 years old, so I don't remember, just going by what my dad told me. But he did tell me that 3-bedroom rancher with a 2-car garage and a stoner brick front, fireplace, full basement, was $17,500 at that time. So yeah, and you know, and he was making a living at it. So that's the most notable thing I can, you know, mention about the building. Barbara asked if I'd say something about the snowmobile business, which is probably one of the things, other than racing, that put Woxall and Upper Salford on the map. My dad was, and there again, it just came as just like everything else that's interesting and fun starts as a hobby. He bought a snowmobile, thought, wow, this is fun. A bunch of friends wanted them, and he helped them get them, and before you know it, one of the most successful Arctic Cat snowmobile businesses in the state was functioning out of Woxall. And he'd go get tractor trailer loads of snowmobiles from Arctic, and I can't remember where that was. And our driveway was always full of stacks 3 and 4 high, you know, and he just couldn't get them fast enough. That's when the snowmobile craze began, back when it used to snow a lot in the winter. So that was interesting, and that went on till probably the mid-70s, and led to my cousin Rick, who's here, you know, was a very successful snowmobile racer. And then another thing that I think is one of the most fascinating things about Upper Salford, at least to me, because I'm a very big race fan, is how many successful and even championship racers come out of our township. Probably more than any other township that I can think of. And I tried to, you know, just unprepared me didn't write them down, but off the top of my head, well, the Raymer family is the most successful and well-known of the, you know, and I think they're going to present something at the...
They're going to be here November 15th, the third Monday of November, because of Thanksgiving. We usually do the last Monday, but we're going to have the Fritz and I guess his wife and sons are going to talk about their racing events with the family starting way back from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Which is many years ago.
Yeah, 3 generations of winning race car drivers, you know, that I know of. You know, Fritchie's dad, Fred. Fritchie was, you know, he's in the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame. Yeah, and his boys now are, yeah, just taking it from there. I think little Freddie's got 3 championships, 3 or 4 already. And yeah, but in addition to the Raymers, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to give too much of their stuff away, but that's just a little primer for next month. But like Roger Richter on Shelley Road was a champion at Grandview. Let me think here. Well, my dad raced and, you know, was a champion at Grandview. Rick was all-time feature winner at Grandview. Rick Schaefer. I had them all coming in my mind. Mike Goulart is a champion. Ronnie Klein, late model champion from Salford Station. Well, Uncle Chippy raced. Uncle Timmy raced up at Grandview and a lot of other places. Dennis Smith, yeah, I think he might have won a late model champion. He won a lot of races. Yeah, the Smith brothers, yeah, they were very involved. I think Elmer Rushon. And if anybody can think of guys I'm not thinking of, add to this because I, off the top of my head, I'm doing the best I can. The Snyders, I think Danny Snyder won a late model championship right on School Road. You mentioned the Snyder household. And Terry, his dad, raced. It's just between winning drivers and championship drivers, I can't think of another township that produced more racing talent than right here. And that's probably only interesting to the race fans. So.
Does anybody have any questions or any comments they'd like to make about the town of Waxhaw? You guys go ahead and ask.
Do you want to come up and speak?
Just real quick, there's the A-frame.
Oh, the A-frame.
Yeah, what's it's just a one.
Well, one specific A-frame. That was Uncle Paul built that, and yeah, he was just the kind of guy that wanted to build something different, really interesting, really challenging, and he did. And now that's kind of a landmark. People say, "Which side of the A-frame's that on?" When you're trying to give them directions. Yeah. So that's a good point. That's Uncle Paul built that, and then Uncle Chippy John bought it. Now his Aunt Marie lives there yet. Yep.
Okay.
I just have a question about the Woxall School. Where is that located? School Road.
Yeah.
Oh, right at the corner of School Road and Perkiomenville Road. It's a brick, pretty.
Between Hendricks and
Between Hendricks and School Road, just a little short road. I can add something too to when she was saying about how the name Woxall. All my life, all my uncles were trying to convince me once Damiani's planted there, it was Wopsall, not Woxall.
there's another man that has a question.
Does anybody want to come up and add some things to the?
More questions laying back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You made reference earlier to the establishment of the Old Ashland Church as a Reformed church. But that was a Union church, I believe.
At that time?
Meaning that was Lutheran and Reformed.
Yes, I didn't go to a lot of detail, but you're right. Beautiful building.
That way in the back has a question.
You want to stand up?
was called Breezy Point.
The dance hall in Waxhaw was called Breezy Point.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you.
You said, she said she went to school at Waxhaw. Where did you go after that? After it was 8th grade in?
Yeah, after 8th grade, for 1 year, we couldn't go anywhere unless we could drive or our parents could take us. But then they sent buses for the Sourgen High School. I know that some of you know more than I do. If you'd like to come up and share, that would be wonderful.
No, I just wanted to share one thing about you. Talking about racing.
Yeah.
Charlie Seal used to have a farm down the end of Burton Road.
There was a racetrack down there, right? Sulky racing. Yeah, I knew that. I knew about that too. Yep, a horse racetrack, Sulky track down there. The end of Burton Road. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions or want to come up and share something? Oh, there's one back
I
here.
just have a question about, did you talk about the Woxall Inn?
The Waxhaw Hotel?
Yeah, I don't know the history.
It was the Black Horse.
If anybody remembers when I swear I had we went to dinner there once.
Well, Mrs. Middlehall
been a long
used to
time.
bake cakes for the Waxhaw Hotel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're going way back to when you could actually go to dinner there, but I
Yeah.
kind of remember doing that.
Then I think it had another name though. Was it called the Black Horse Inn?
The Black Horse Inn
Yeah.
and restaurant, and then later it was more of a restaurant, and today it's a private home.
When I was a little girl, it was known as the Waxhaw Hotel. I lived in Waxhaw for approximately 2.5 years, right next to the Waxhaw Hotel, heading towards Salfordville. My grandparents had that house. So I was 2.5 years old when we moved to Salfordville. But Mrs. Zimbody ran the Waxhaw Hotel at that point in time. So,
Did the Salfordville Hotel ever serve dinners?
Yeah, my mom did on the weekends, yeah, she did. And then twice a year she'd have clam bakes, but now we're getting away from Woxall.
That's, Southford's kind of the suburbs of Wausau, right?
Southward, but not Southwardville.
Anyone else?
Well, I would like to thank both of you. You did a tremendous job on the history of Woxall. You told me things that I didn't know, and I thought I knew a lot about a lot of the township, but some of those names are unbelievable, and thank you very much for all the time and effort you put in it, and I'm so glad I talked you into coming to do this because you did a wonderful job.
Thank you all, and thank you, Barbara. It's been a pleasure to be here with everyone, and just God bless you and keep. Oh, one thing about Woxall, and even in Harleysville, people say, "Where do you live?" We say Woxall. Where is that? And I say, "It's a secret."
Here's a little something on behalf of the township for doing this. We appreciate it very much. You're welcome.